House Bill 1125 would expand judicial discretion, which is just about the dumbest thing that we could do in Washington state right now. Why? Well, because we have a lot of activist judges who already have discretion and who use it all the time to let people out without posting any bail, to give a slap on the wrist to violent criminals. But now they want to give judges discretion to go back and change the sentences of violent criminal offenders who are sitting in prison right now. Remember, this is the one I say would mean no finality for victims. Your family member could get shot. You think there is a trial and a sentencing and that the person's in prison for 25 years. And then you find out one day that an activist judge decided that that sentence that was handed down to them all those years ago no longer serves the interest of justice. This is from the bill. It says the legislature intends to authorize sentencing courts to review lengthy sentences upon a showing that a person's original sentence no longer serves the interest of justice. Give you one guess who this bill is from. One guess. Nicole, you haven't seen this clip yet. You got a guess?
Well, I have.
Oh, you have? Oh, well, she already knows then.
Yeah, I have.
It is from the lawmaker who's, I think, the only one to have actually served time in prison and who now spends all of her time as a lawmaker advocating for criminals, Tara Simmons.
Now we have people who are old in our prisons and we're getting sued all the time because they're not set up to be nursing homes and because not ever having an out date and getting 60 years when you're 20 really gives you no incentive to rehabilitate. You're going to be there forever.
Well, if you got 60 years when you were 20, you probably did something pretty bad. And yeah, that was the point. Like, hey, they're going to be in prison for 60 years because of the crime they committed. And if they have no interior incentive to rehabilitate because they're going to be there forever, why is that our problem? If they would like to just sit in prison and not ever, over the course of 60 years, try to become a better person, try to find a way to be productive behind bars, why is that our problem? They need their sentence changed in order to be productive? And you want to give really any judge that someone might petition across the state of Washington, and you're going to, of course, petition the activist judges in the activist jurisdictions. You want to give them the power to go back in time and decide, because the judge at the time didn't know best, to decide, hey, I don't think that sentence serves the interest of justice anymore. Now, this just drives me nuts. As with most hearings on bills that are controversial, what do? Well, in the House Public Safety Committee, chaired by Representative Roger Goodman, they like to leave the testimony on those bills to the very end of the allotted time for the committee. Because they get so many people who sign in to testify, and if it's controversial, they want to hear from as few people as possible. And that's what they did in this case, pushed it to the end. So we're going to run out of time to hear about the people who want to talk about our dumb ideas or dangerous ideas. Except, of course, they want to make time, and they always make time for the individuals who they want to hear from before anyone else. For example, here's the last person who got a chance to testify, Roger Goodman introducing them.
The final person to testify that we only have time for is Judge Veronica Galvan.
Oh, the final person who we only have time for. The most notorious judge in the entire state of Washington, Judge Veronica Galvan. I'll remind you in a moment of all her past indiscretions. Here is the testimony that she offered the committee on why judges like herself, again, the most soft on crime, pro-criminal judge in the state, should have discretion to overturn sentences that have already been handed down. Here she is.
Good morning. I'm here as co-chair of the Minority and Justice Commission. The Minority and Justice Commission supports second look policies because we know that past policies have had disparate and disproportionate impacts on certain communities in Washington state. There was a time when we didn't have guidelines that were ministerial in nature that allowed these sentences to proliferate in the way that we do. Everybody talks about the law, but this law is not that old. It has been within certainly my lifetime. And we know now what this has wrought. We know better, and we are obligated to do better. I commend to you the actual data on these sentences. Please read Drs. Catherine Beckett and Heather Evans, who did a study understanding the proliferation of long life sentences. And the numbers don't lie. Previous resentencing opportunities, such as those after the Miller fix, have resulted in a minuscule rates of recidivism. Life and long sentences have led to the state's prison population to become older, providing more costly and less impactful public safety, and they would not have as great impacts on public safety. There's also an opportunity here to engage in true restorative justice. True restorative justice, which would allow and be victim-centered and allow the victims to talk about healing, something that, frankly, our current justice system is not good at. I think that there is opportunity here for both victims and offenders to hold to the concept that people are capable of changing and to reconcile ourselves with what we've done.
Yeah. Restorative justice. Yeah, the most activist judge in the state, who they make time for her to testify, of course, on the bill that will give judges like her discretion to end people's sentences and put them back in society. And she has all the buzzwords that the left loves: restorative justice, we'll be victim-centered, as if any single thing she's ever done has been victim-centered. Think about it. This judge that testified, wanting more discretion. Let's go through her greatest hits, shall we? Let's see. Attacker who fractured El Corazon singer's skull out of jail. Yeah, released by Judge Veronica Galvin. Didn't matter that, random attack, fractured someone's skull. Oh, you're fine. You just go home. You get your little ankle monitor on, whatever it is. Judge releases 12-year-old accused of using ghost gun in Seattle carjacking. That was also Judge Veronica Galvin, because it's just a 12-year-old. Oh, he's just having fun. Ghost gun, carjacking. Kids will be kids. No big deal. Teens arrested with modified guns at Chinatown Seafair Parade, released to home monitoring. Yes, as if in any other place in the country, if somebody showed up with modified guns that were modified to be automatic to a parade, that person wouldn't be looking at 50 years in prison. But no. These are teens. And in the eyes of Judge Veronica Galvin, teens are just kids, and even if they commit very serious crimes, even if they put lives in danger, she's always going to take it easy on kids. Now, I will say, thank God, because you're watching this, and you're like, she's testifying in favor of this bill, but she is the literal reason this bill shouldn't exist. She is the chief argument, her and a few other real bad judges, the chief argument against House Bill 1125, against giving judges discretion to end lengthy sentences. And thank God, I have to give credit to Democratic State Representative Lauren Davis. She represents the Shoreline area. So she sits on this committee. And I was shocked as this was happening. I said, is she really going to do this? This is a Democrat who realizes how ridiculous it is that Judge Galvin is the one before their committee advocating that it would be perfectly fine, nothing would go wrong if you give judges like her more discretion. Here's Representative Davis.
I take my job on this committee very seriously, and as our name suggests, our primary objective is community safety. So I'll preface this by saying I mean this with all due respect, and this is a very sincere question for you as I'm struggling with how to vote or how to amend this legislation. So the bill before us is titled the Judicial Discretion Act, and you are here testifying, asking us to grant judges more discretion. But within your current discretion, you released one defendant who then shot and killed a 15-year-old boy, and another defendant who 2 weeks later tied a 14-year-old boy to a tree and disemboweled him. That was in December. So if I vote for this policy, some of these incarcerated individuals are released and then they do reoffend, I consider myself culpable. And so my question to you is, how can I have confidence in granting more discretion to judicial officers when I already have concerns about the ability of some judges to assess dangerousness and prioritize public safety?
Great question.
I will say this. I can't speak as to specific cases that are pending before me because of ethics rules. But I will tell you that each and every single judge takes each and every single decision seriously. I've been a judge for 23 years. I'm not going to be perfect. None of us is going to be. We do our best to try to look at our crystal ball and say, is this person somebody who might have a shot if they're given supports and opportunities? Sometimes that works. Actually, in the majority of times that works if you're only quoting 2 cases in my 23 years of judicial performance. I've made thousands upon thousands upon thousands of decisions every single day. And every single one of those I take extraordinarily seriously, as do every single one of my colleagues. Now, if you expect perfection in every single decision, or us to be able to say, this is the person who's going to do it, or this is the person who's not going to do it, I understand. I also don't get asked about that one person that I kept in that 6 years later was found not guilty for murder. Nobody tells me about that person that I held and later was determined to be not guilty. And that's happened as well. I've had also people that everybody's insisted should not be released, who've gone on to do extraordinary things. Those things don't make the news because those things don't give people fear. Those things don't allow people to react on their base instincts. Those things don't allow people to think critically and in a nuanced manner about what we're trying to do as a society.
Yeah, it's us. Our instincts are just taking over. Like, oh, I can't be perfect. You can't expect perfection. So one kid gets hung from a tree and disemboweled. What do you expect from me? And she acts as if Lauren Davis gave her the only 2 possible examples. No, we just read 3. There are multiple examples over a very short period of time of Judge Veronica Galvin's misconduct, and that's what I would call it, of her poor judgment. If she wants us to go back through the 20 or so odd years she's been on the bench, I'm sure we can find hundreds. Because if we can find that many in the course of a year, and she wants to say, well, I'm not going to be perfect. You're far from perfect. You are an example of the thing that is wrong with our criminal justice system because you prioritize criminals over the law-abiding. And you are a perfect example of why House Bill 1125 cannot be allowed to pass. And even a Democrat on that committee saw that. It's unreal to me. And again, the House Public Safety Committee has just become a committee focused on making the state less safe. We've had so many examples of it. I challenged Roger Goodman when he was on this show last week to give me one example of something the Public Safety Committee was doing that would actually make life more difficult for criminals or that would improve public safety. And he got into this thing about we're going to try to improve safety at like bus stops and stuff. I said, you mean by taking away our right to bear arms around public transit to protect ourselves? And he's sort of like, well, acknowledging they're very dangerous places to be, but that they've made it nearly impossible. You can't have a gun, you can't have a knife, you can't have anything to try to defend yourself against some of these violent attacks that have happened on trains, at bus stops. It's because they don't want you to be safe. It's the only explanation for any of this.